I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding as I watched my own mother take the stand. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife, as she looked directly at me, then turned to face the judge. This woman who had raised me was now testifying on behalf of my ex-wife Sophia, insisting I should pay child support for a baby we both knew was not mine. Her words echoed in my ears. DNA does not matter. Family is family. I remembered the Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings, wondering how we ended up here. If you are watching this, let me know where you are viewing from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I expose the ugly truth that turned my entire family against my mother and led my father to file for divorce after 35 years of marriage. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Cleveland, Ohio, the only child of Thomas and Angela Williams. My relationship with my parents was always somewhat complicated. My father, Thomas, was my hero growing up. He worked as an architect, often bringing home blueprints that fascinated me for hours. We bonded over baseball games, fishing trips, and his patient lessons about how to fix things around the house. He was calm, reasonable, and always willing to listen. My mother, Angela, was another story entirely. As a high school counselor, she prided herself on understanding people, but her approach to parenting involved constant criticism disguised as concern. Nothing I accomplished ever seemed quite good enough. If I brought home an A-, she would ask why it was not an A+. When I won second place in the science fair, she wondered aloud what I could have done to place first. Their marriage always puzzled me. My father, despite his strength in other areas of life, seemed to wilt under my mother's domineering personality. He kept the peace by giving in a pattern I watched play out hundreds of times throughout my childhood. When arguments arose, he would eventually sigh, shake his head, and say, "Well, whatever you think is best, Angela." I carried these family dynamics into adulthood, always seeking my mother's approval, while finding comfort in my father's unconditional support. By the time I graduated college and began my career as a software engineer, I had learned to maintain a cordial but guarded relationship with my mother, while cherishing my closer bond with my dad. Everything changed when I met Sophia during my second year at the tech company where I worked. She came in as a new marketing coordinator, and I first noticed her during a cross-departmental meeting. With her confident smile and intelligent questions, she immediately caught my attention. Our first real conversation happened by the coffee machine, where she complimented the Star Wars mug I brought from home. That simple interaction led to lunch together, which turned into dinner the following week. Our romance progressed quickly. Sophia was vivacious, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in everything about me. Within 3 months, we were spending every weekend together. 6 months in, we started discussing moving in together. What surprised me most during this time was my mother's reaction to Sophia. For once, she seemed to approve of someone in my life. Angela would invite us over for dinner, frequently call Sophia for lunch dates, and constantly mention how perfect she thought Sophia was for me. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. Sophia would sometimes cancel plans last minute with vague explanations. Her phone would light up with texts she would quickly hide. There were inconsistencies in her stories about where she had been or who she had been with, but I was so caught up in the relationship and so pleased with my mother's approval that I brushed these concerns aside. We got engaged after a year of dating and married 6 months later in a ceremony that my mother practically took over planning. My father pulled me aside during the rehearsal dinner and asked quietly if I was sure about everything. The way he phrased it struck me as odd at the time. Not, "Are you sure about Sophia?" but "Are you sure about everything?" I assured him I was interpreting his question as typical pre-wedding jitters advice. The first year of marriage seemed happy enough on the surface. I was putting in long hours at work, pushing for a promotion that would set us up financially for the future we had planned. Sophia continued in marketing but switched to a larger company with better advancement opportunities. We bought a small house in the suburbs with a yard that I imagined future children playing in. Around our first anniversary, I began noticing changes in Sophia. She became distant, often coming home late from work events. She grew protective of her phone and laptop, changing passwords and turning screens away when I entered the room. When I would question these behaviors, she would accuse me of being controlling or paranoid. One night while Sophia was in the shower, a text notification lit up her phone on the coffee table. I had never been the type to snoop, but the preview message contained the words, "Miss you already." Against my better judgment, I picked up the phone. The message was from someone named James. Scrolling up, I found dozens of exchanges that went well beyond professional communication, including plans to meet at a hotel and references to their time together. When confronted, Sophia turned the situation around on me. She accused me of invading her privacy, insisted James was just a friend and colleague, and somehow by the end of the argument, I was the one apologizing. What I did not know then was that she called my mother immediately after giving her a version of events that painted me as jealous and possessive. The next day, my mother called to lecture me about trusting my wife and not letting insecurity ruin my marriage. It was the first clear indication of the alliance that had formed between them, though I did not recognize its significance at the time. 3 months after the text incident, Sophia announced she was pregnant. Under normal circumstances, this would have been joyful news. We had discussed starting a family soon, but I immediately did the mental math, and something did not add up. Due to a major project launch, I had been away on business for nearly 2 weeks, during the time frame when conception would have occurred according to the dates Sophia shared from her doctor. When I carefully raised this concern, Sophia erupted in tears and anger. How could I accuse her of something so horrible at what should be the happiest time in our lives? My scientific mind tried to find explanations. The dates were miscalculated. The pregnancy was further along than estimated, but deep down a cold. Certainty was forming. I confided in my father during a private lunch. He listened carefully, his face growing increasingly troubled. "Son," he said finally, "these are serious doubts. But be absolutely certain before you make accusations you cannot take back. Family is complicated." He seemed to be wrestling with something unspoken, and now I wonder if he had his own suspicions about my mother that he never voiced. As Sophia's pregnancy progressed, her behavior became even more suspicious. She would have hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. Multiple times I came home early to find her scrambling to close laptop windows or end calls. The name James kept appearing in fragments of conversations I overheard. 6 months into the pregnancy, I came home early from work, with flowers, hoping to reconnect and perhaps rebuild some trust. What I found was Sophia in our living room, with a man I had never met sitting closer than colleagues would normally sit. They jumped apart when I entered, and Sophia hurriedly introduced him as James, her marketing team colleague. The awkward tension in the room spoke volumes, as did the guilty expressions they both wore. That night after James left, I finally gathered my courage and directly confronted Sophia. I asked plainly if James was the father of the baby. Her denial was immediate and vehement, but lacked the genuine shock. Such an accusation should provoke in an innocent person. Instead, she called my mother sobbing about my horrible accusations. Within 30 minutes, my mother was at our house, despite living across town. She immediately took Sophia's side, comforting her while shooting daggers at me with her eyes. "That is a terrible thing to say to your pregnant wife, Earl," she scolded me in the kitchen. "What is wrong with you? Even if there were any truth to it, which there is not, this is your child now. You need to man up and be a father." The next day, I moved temporarily into my friend Kyle's apartment, needing space to think clearly away from both Sophia and my mother's influence. From there, I called a family law attorney and scheduled a consultation. The lawyer advised me that I had the right to request a paternity test, and that doing so early before establishing any pattern of care for the child would protect me legally. When I told Sophia I wanted a paternity test after the baby was born, she refused outright. "You do not trust me, and that shows you do not deserve to be in this child's life," she declared. My mother backed her completely, calling me selfish and accusing me of abandoning my family out of paranoia. Despite my father's urging for reconciliation, I filed for separation and made it clear I would not sign the birth certificate without a DNA test. Sophia, in response, filed for divorce and preemptively requested child support, claiming I was trying to escape my financial responsibilities. As the legal proceedings began, Sophia gave birth to a baby girl she named Madison. Despite my reservations, I went to the hospital where I found my mother already installed in the room like a protective sentinel. The moment I saw the baby, my doubts crystallized into certainty. With dark hair and olive skin, Nothing like my blonde, fair complexion, or Sophia's light brown hair and pale features. The child was visibly not mine. Yet both Sophia and my mother acted as though I was a monster, for even implying a paternity test was needed. During this period, I discovered my mother had been giving Sophia money to help with baby expenses. I might have found this generous under different circumstances, but given the situation, it felt like another betrayal. The final straw came during a tense family dinner at my parents' house, where my mother announced she would be helping Sophia with her legal fees in the divorce and custody proceedings. I lost my temper, then demanding to know why my own mother was taking my ex-wife's side against me. Her answer chilled me to the bone. Because she is thinking about what is best for the baby. Unlike you, that innocent child needs a father, and you are trying to use a technicality to abandon her. My father tried to intervene, suggesting everyone calm down, but when pressed by my mother, he would not explicitly support my position. The dinner ended with my mother telling me if I could not accept my responsibility to this child, regardless of biology, then perhaps I should leave. For the first time in my life, I saw real conflict between my parents as my father protested weakly. Angela, he is still our son, but I did leave feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. What I did not know then was that this painful evening would be the catalyst for the truth finally emerging. The court date for our preliminary hearing arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, my lawyer beside me, reviewing our strategy one final time. Sophia arrived with her attorney, my mother, walking in beside her like a protective guardian. My father slipped in later, sitting in the back, his expression unreadable. When the proceedings began, Sophia took the stand first. Under her lawyer's questioning, she painted a picture of me as a husband who had become distant during her pregnancy, who had abandoned her due to unfounded jealousy and paranoia, and who was now trying to escape financial responsibility for our child. She cried at all the right moments, her hand protectively cradling her slightly rounded stomach, despite having given birth months ago. Next to my complete shock, my mother was called as a witness for Sophia's side. I watched in disbelief as she was sworn in, her hand steady on the Bible as she promised to tell the truth. The betrayal I felt in that moment was physical, a pain that started in my chest and radiated outward until my fingertips tingled. My mother's testimony was devastating. She described me as having a history of jealousy and abandoning responsibilities when things got difficult, neither of which was true. She spoke about how excited I initially was about the pregnancy, implying my sudden doubts were merely an excuse to leave a situation I found challenging. But the statement that truly broke me came when Sophia's lawyer asked about the paternity concerns. Angela, Mrs. Williams, do you believe Earl has legitimate concerns about being Madison's biological father? The lawyer asked. My mother looked directly at me, her expression hard before turning back to the attorney. DNA does not matter, she stated firmly. Family is family. The child needs a father, and Earl is the one who married her mother. That makes him responsible regardless of biology. I felt like I had been punched. My own mother was effectively acknowledging the child might not be mine biologically, but arguing that I should be financially responsible anyway. My lawyer squeezed my arm, silently reminding me to maintain my composure. When my turn came to testify, I presented the timeline of events as clearly as I could: my business trip during the conception window, the text messages I had found discovering James in my home, and the physical characteristics of the baby that clearly indicated different parentage. I requested that the court order a paternity test before making any decisions about child support. To my relief, the judge agreed that a paternity test was reasonable given the circumstances. Despite objections from Sophia's lawyer, the test was ordered with results to be presented at our next hearing. 2 weeks later, the official results arrived by certified mail, 0% probability of paternity. I was definitively not the biological father of Madison. Armed with this scientific proof, I met with Sophia at a neutral location, my lawyer present on speakerphone. When confronted with the undeniable evidence, Sophia finally broke down. Yes, she admitted through tears. James was the baby's father. They had been having an affair for months before the pregnancy, but James had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with a baby or family responsibilities. He had in fact already accepted a job transfer to another state when she discovered she was pregnant. "I did what I thought was best for my baby," she said, her voice small. "I knew you would be a good father." "What about my mother?" I asked the question that had been burning inside me. Did she know the truth? Sophia hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I told her I was scared when you first moved out. She said sometimes men need to be pushed into responsibility, and that once you bonded with the baby, the biological details would not matter." This confirmation of my mother's deliberate deception was the final piece I needed. I now understood I was facing not just a dishonest wife, but an orchestrated effort by my own mother to trap me in a situation she felt was appropriate regardless of truth or my own wishes. That evening, I began meticulously documenting everything that had happened. I collected the paternity test results, text messages between Sophia and myself, emails where my mother had inserted herself into our marital problems, and my own detailed timeline of events. I even found old emails where my mother had arranged lunches with Sophia during periods when I now knew the affair was ongoing, raising serious questions about how much she had known and when. My next step was to meet with my lawyer again, this time to discuss potential legal action against my mother for her role in the situation. While he advised that perjury charges would be difficult to pursue without direct evidence, she had lied under oath, rather than merely expressed her opinion. He agreed that I had every right to present the full truth to the rest of my porting family. With strategic precision, I arranged to meet with my cousin Patrick, who had always been close to both me and my father. I showed him the evidence, explaining the entire situation without emotional embellishment, letting the facts speak for themselves. Patrick was stunned, particularly by my mother's role. He agreed to help me speak with other family members, including my father's brother, Uncle Robert, who had considerable influence in the family. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically shared my documentation with key family members. I was careful not to seem vindictive, presenting only verified facts and copies of actual evidence. The response was a wave of shock, followed by growing anger, not at me, but at my mother, for her manipulation and willingness to sacrifice me to maintain appearances. The most damning evidence came unexpectedly. After hearing rumors about my campaign of truth, Sophia contacted me, apparently worried about her own reputation. In a recorded conversation that my lawyer assured me was legal in our state, she admitted that my mother had known about her affair with James almost from the beginning. More shockingly, she revealed that my mother had actively encouraged her to stay in the marriage and pass the child off as mine, even suggesting ways to discourage me from seeking a paternity test. As this evidence circulated through the family, the effects were immediate and dramatic. My Aunt Lisa canceled the annual family reunion that my mother always hosted. Cousins stopped bringing their children for visits. My Uncle Robert, my father's older brother, called my mother directly to express his disgust at her behavior. Family friends began to distance themselves, making excuses to avoid social engagements she arranged. But the most significant impact was on my father. When I finally showed him all the evidence, including Sophia's recorded confession, something changed in him. He had always bent to my mother's will, always found ways to excuse her controlling behavior. This time he could not look away from the truth of what she had done to his only son. 4 days after our conversation, my father called to tell me he had moved into a hotel and was consulting with a divorce attorney. After 35 years of marriage, he had reached his breaking point. "I feel like I failed you, son," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have seen what she was doing. I should have stopped it." The fallout from the revelations continued through the spring and into summer. Extended family who had once treated my mother as the matriarch now viewed her with suspicion and kept their distance. Holiday plans were rearranged to exclude her while including my father and me. Even her closest friends seemed to drift away, as rumors of the situation spread through their social circles. In court, the final judgment came swiftly once the paternity test results were submitted. All claims for child support were dismissed. My lawyer even raised the possibility of seeking damages for emotional distress and legal expenses, though I ultimately decided against it. I wanted to move forward, not remain entangled in legal battles. Sophia, now a single mother with dwindling support, eventually moved back to her parents' home in Michigan. She sent a lengthy email apologizing for her deception, explaining but not excusing her choices. I did not respond. Some betrayals run too deep for forgiveness to be immediate, if possible at all. As for my father, he filed for divorce after 3 decades of marriage. He rented an apartment across town and began the slow process of building an independent life. During this period, our relationship grew stronger than ever. We spoke daily, had dinner together twice a week, and even planned a fishing trip that had been postponed for years. One evening, as we sat on his small balcony watching the sunset, he confessed that he had always sensed something controlling in my mother, but had convinced himself it was strength, not manipulation. "I would never have believed she could do this to you, to our own son," he said quietly. I kept thinking there must be an explanation, some misunderstanding, but the evidence. He shook his head. "It forces me to reconsider every decision she ever influenced in our lives." My own healing process was slower and more deliberate. I started therapy to process the dual betrayal by my wife and mother. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I threw myself into work, earning a promotion that had once seemed out of reach. And eventually, cautiously, I began dating again, though, with a new wariness that both saddened and protected me. 6 months after the court case concluded, my mother reached out requesting we meet for lunch. Against my therapist's reservations, I agreed, choosing a public restaurant where emotions would need to remain contained. She looked older, diminished somehow, without her usual sphere of family influence bolstering her confidence. "Earl," she began after we had ordered, "I think this has all gone far enough. The family is in tatters. Your father is being completely unreasonable. It is time to put this behind us and move forward as a family." I studied her face, searching for any sign of genuine remorse or understanding. I found none. "You still do not think you did anything wrong, do you?" I asked quietly. She sighed impatiently. "I did what I thought was best for everyone. That child needed a father. Sophia needed support. And frankly, you needed to grow up and accept responsibility. Sometimes mothers have to make difficult decisions for the good of the family." There it was, the same justification, unchanged by months of consequences. In that moment, I realized my mother was incapable of seeing her actions through any lens but her own righteous certainty. I set down my water glass carefully. "Mom, I will only have a relationship with you under certain conditions. First, you need to acknowledge what you did was wrong, not just misguided, but fundamentally wrong. Second, you need to apologize to me, Dad, and the entire family for the deception. And third, you need to get counseling to understand why you thought it was acceptable to sacrifice your son's life and happiness for your own vision of how things should be." Her expression hardened. "So that is it. Ultimatums now. After everything I have done for you your entire life?" "No, not ultimatums," I replied, standing up. "Boundaries. For the first time in my life, healthy boundaries. If you ever decide you are ready to respect them, you know how to reach me." I left the restaurant knowing she might never contact me on those terms, and finding peace in that possibility. 1 year later, much has changed. My father, though still legally married due to complicated divorce proceedings, has found a new sense of independence. He has reconnected with old friends, taken up golf, and even begun a friendship with a widow from his church group. The rest of the family has restructured itself around new gatherings and traditions that no longer center on my mother. As for me, I have learned lessons about family that I never expected to face. I have learned that sometimes the people who should love you most can hurt you deepest. I have learned that standing up for truth may cost relationships but saves your soul. Most importantly, I have learned that family is indeed more than DNA, but not in the way my mother meant. Family is about honesty, respect, and mutual support, characteristics that have nothing to do with biology, but everything to do with love. The experience has made me more cautious, yes, but also more authentic. I no longer seek approval from those who would use it as leverage. I no longer sacrifice my truth to keep peace. And while forgiveness remains a work in progress, I have found something perhaps more valuable: the freedom to define family on my own terms based on the integrity of relationships, rather than the obligations of blood. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who betrayed your trust? How did you balance forgiveness with self-protection? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone in your own family struggles, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the strength to stand in your truth, whatever challenges you may be facing.